Back at it again. Quadash, 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 Adonai, Elohim, Sabaoth, meaning holy, 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 Lord of hosts. That mantra and prayer being said that the angels sing day and night is said to remove any negative energy of the evil inclination from amongst your present immediately when said. And a multiple of four. You want to say these things more than once, to get the full effect. Yah, He, Va, He. The four syllables as a collective whole creating a tetragrammaton. And the four syllables meaning divine masculine, divine feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine. First, Yah, Father who art in heaven. He, the divine feminine, Mother Nature. And Chokma, Mother Wisdom, who art in the earth and the womb, where mankind was created and formed from the dirt of the earth, and the breath of life was breathed into them, which is the ether, the energy state of creation, as above, so below, the macro prosophis above and the micro prosophis below, because we are the host of the Elohim to be a light and a reflection to the rest of the world, because in the beginning, Elohim said, let us create them in our image to be a light to the world, And us being plural, more than one. Divine masculine, divine feminine. Since I'm on the road today, I figured I'm going to do a third video out of the Kybalion, and we're going to go into the principle and the law of gender. No further introduction. Let's jump right into it, and embed this into the mind of the spiritualites. Gender is in everything. Everything has masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The Kybalion, the great seventh Hermetic principle, the principle of gender, embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, that the masculine and feminine principles are ever present and active in all phases of phenomenon on each and every plane of life. At this point, we think it well to call your attention to the fact that gender in its hermetic sense and sex in the ordinary accepted use of the term are not the same. The word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. A moment's consideration will show you that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex. The latter refers to the physical distinctions between male and female living things. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a certain plane of the great physical plane, the plane of organic life. We wish to impress this distinction upon your minds for the reason that certain writers who have acquired a smattering of the Hermetic philosophy have sought to identify the seventh Hermetic principle with wild and fanciful and often reprehensible theories and teachings regarding sex. The office of gender is solely that of creating, producing, generating, etc. And its manifestations are visible on every plane of phenomena. It is somewhat difficult to produce proofs of this along scientific lines for the reason that science has not as yet recognized this principle as of universal application. But still, some proofs are forthcoming from scientific sources. In the first place, we find a distinct manifestation of the principle of gender among the corpuscles, ions, and electrons, which constitute the basis of matter, as science now knows the latter, in which, by forming certain combinations from the atom, which until lately was regarded as final and indivisible, The latest word of science is that the atom is composed of a multitude of corpuscles, electrons, or ions, the various names being applied by different authorities, revolving around each other and vibrating at a high degree and intensity. But the accompanying statement is made that the formation of the atom is really due to the clustering of the negative corpuscles around a positive one. The positive corpuscles seeming to exert a certain influence upon the negative corpuscles, causing the latter to assume certain combinations and thus create or generate an atom. This is in line with the most ancient Hermetic teachings, which have always identified the masculine principle of gender with the positive and the feminine with the negative poles of electricity, so called. Now, a word at this point regarding this identification. The public mind has forced an entirely erroneous impression regarding the qualities of the so-called negative pole of electrified or magnetized matter. Magneticism, magnetized matter, your vibration. The terms positive and negative are very wrongly applied to this phenomenon by science. The word positive means something real and strong as compared with a negative unreality or weakness. Nothing is further from the real facts of electrical phenomena. The so-called negative pole of the battery is really the pole in and by which the generation or production of new forms and energies is manifested. This is nothing negative about it. The best scientific authorities now use the word cathodes, cathode in place of negative. The word cathode coming from the Greek root meaning descent, the path of generation, etc. From the cathode pole emerged the swarm of electrons and corpuscles. From the same pole emerged those wonderful rays which have revolutionized scientific conceptions during the past decade. The cathode's pole is the mother of all the strange phenomena which have rendered useless the old textbooks and which have caused many long accepted theories to be regulated in the scrap pile of the scientific speculation. All right, let's hold it right there. In the Zohar book, which I did the lesson of David and Bathsheba earlier, it actually breaks down the divine masculine and the divine feminine and the Godhead, and with the Hebrew Sephiroth, and it tells you that the right side is the masculine side, and it gives you a whole breakdown of the masculine. It also says the left side is the divine feminine side, in which, the mother. The mother is the destroyer because Mother Nature, when Mother Nature is awoken, judgments are rendered. So the divine feminine energy, when Hay is released, the divine feminine, Mother Nature starts to run its course, and you see natural disasters and catastrophes happen upon the earth. Also, you see Mother Nature also being a nourisher, producer of herbs, producer of life, and also, like a woman, a nurturing spirit, you know. So that's just one thing. That's something you can go look up later, but I just wanted to say that because, right side being divine masculine, left side being divine feminine, and like we said before, in duality, there's always a counterbalance between the two. The cathodes or negative poles is the mother principle of electrical phenomenon and of the finest forms of matter as yet known to science. So you see, we are justified in refusing to use them. Negative in our consideration of the subject and and insisting upon substituting the word feminine for the old term. I can see why they would say that, but it's not true, because when you learn how duality works, it all makes sense. The duality is polarity, which we did a lesson on that, the laws and principles of polarity, which is duality. The fact of the case bear us out in this without taking the Hermetic teachings into consideration, and so we shall use the word feminine in the place of negative in speaking of the pole of activity. The latest scientific teachings are that the creative corpuscles or electrons are feminine. Science says they are composed of negative electricity. We say they are composed of feminine energy. It will make more sense. A feminine corpuscle becomes detached from, or rather leaves a masculine corpuscle and starts on a new career, and actively seeks a union with a masculine corpuscle, being urged thereto by the natural impulse to create new forms of matter or energy. And when you look at the Hebrew Sephiroths of Godhead, the Hebrew Sephiroths are, basically correlate with the chakras. And the chakras are energy fields in your body. They're circles around composed, different light spectrums going from below your root chakra all the way to your crown chakra. And they're swirling balls and corpuscles of energy, which you could also say is the ether. And they rise, and they're triggered based upon your emotions, because each one of the chakras are attached to a specific emotion. So based upon what your intent is at a specific time, or where you're at in time, space, and matter, and what triggers a specific thing is how that emotion will go off, and how that energy will, correlate and reflect around those chakras, those energy fields within your body, those emotions, and that Kundalini rising, So that's why I say it's key to know the chakras, it's key to know the Hebrew Sephiroth, because alcohol and all in one and all. This all goes hand in hand. You can't have one thing without the other. The Most High is vast countenance. He's not subject to a little space. He and she, they're in all things, and they both have their duty. But together they are collective whole, creating the tetragrammaton. Being urged thereto by the natural impulse to create new forms of matter. So we read that matter is this energy, this condensed energy, protons, electrons, neutrons together, which come together from a singular state to, a collective, and create a solid. And solids is what we know as matter, because when we're born, we come from that liquid state, the semen, which comes from the brain gland, and that liquid eventually it manifests into a woman's womb, where it becomes a solid, and solid is matter, because that fluid, that liquid is an energy state, and based upon your emotion you had when you were having sex or doing it, that's why the children, they'll come out and have the mindset and the state in which you were in when you were producing them, based upon that emotion you was feeling, because it's all in the substance, the liquid, that becomes the solid when it's manifest in the woman. you know to create new forms of matter or energy. One writer goes so far as to use the term it at once seeks of its own volition a union, etc. This detachment and uniting form the basis of the greater part of the activities of the chemical world. See? Because your semen is a chemical. It's a chemical substance that is released from the brain, and then once it comes out and it's ejaculated into a woman, and goes into her egg, that's where that chemical substance will become physical matter, you know. It's like the cake batter. You put it in the oven, and then as it heats up and rises, it becomes a solid. Comes a solid object from liquid. You know, bake the cake in the oven. When the feminine corpuscles unites with a masculine corpuscle, a certain process is begun. The feminine particles vibrate rapidly under the influence of the masculine energy, semen, the chemical compound which comes from the brain. A circle rapidly around the latter. Circle those energy fields, motions in the body. The result is the birth of a new atom, a new energy form. See? This new, same thing with the Elohim did in the beginning, from the ether, the energy state, and then it became a matter state, physical matter. And then everything else from there reproduced the same way on this plane of existence. This new atom is really composed of a union of the masculine and feminine electrons or corpuscles, but when the union is formed, the atom is a separate thing, having certain properties but no longer manifesting the property of free electricity. The process of detachment or separation of the feminine electrons is called ionization. Ionization. Remember when I told you, you say Kodash, 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 Adonai, Elohim, Sabaoth, it removes any negative energy, meaning ions throughout the airways. And that's why when people light sage, the smoke, that's what the sage does. Once it goes into the airways of the energy realm and of the ether, that's all around you, it removes those negative charges of energy from amongst the airways. And that's, through the smoke of the sage, but it's also can be reverberated through your throat chakra and a vibration by speaking those words or mantra into existence. It also removes it because it's sound. Sound is a vibration, and once you vibrate, that sound reflects your intent through your throat chakra. You get the same effect as when you light the sage. Earth, wind will be air, fire, and water. Those four elements. Smoke would be the air. Earth, fire. Fire would be like when you light the candle, and because fire is symbolic to spirit. And water. Most people of spiritual lights and aspect that are in a deeper understanding. When you put a bowl of water under your bed or on a dresser with, it could be your planetary fruit or something, but water absorbs negative energy as well, just like sage removes negative energy as well. Just why, like fire, lighting a candle is symbolic to, open up the door for the spirit. That's why if you ever heard in the book of Revelation, it says that those angels collected, those prayers, and they went up in the incense, and was taken to the Most High, the right hand of the throne, because that's an analogy, a metaphor, it's telling you something there. That's why it's key to know, just like it tells you about all the crystals in the Bible. But that's another thing that people disregard, because crystals come from the earth element, the earth, earth, wind, fire, air. Earth, wind would be considered air, fire, and water. Earth, like I said, crystals come from the earth. The geomagnetic field, the magnetic field of the earth, which is connected to the ley lines, as above, so below. That's another topic, but that's something I've been going on since I've been doing these videos, that people, thought I was crazy at first, but the more I brought, the information out to prove it, a lot of people aren't, fighting with me as much anymore, because I'm actually studying these things, understanding these things, and actually studying until I show myself approved. The process of detachment or separation of the feminine electrons is called ionization. Remember, I was just telling you about the ions in the air. These electrons or corpuscles are the most active workers in nature's field, arising from their unions or combinations, manifest the varied phenomenon of light, heat, electricity, magnetism, attraction, repulsion, chemical affinity, 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 because it sounds like X infinity, but it's affinity with an A, and the reverse and similar phenomenon. And all this arises from the operation of the principle of gender on the plane of energy, which is ether, Ashe, Ashe, Akasha, Akashic Records. The part of the masculine principle seems to be that of the directing a certain inherent energy towards the feminine principle and thus starting into activity the creative process. But the feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all planes, and yet each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. That's where you have your duality at, the counterbalance. In some of the forms of life, the two principles are combined in one organism. For that matter, everything in the organic world manifests both genders. There is always the masculine present in the feminine form and the feminine form. The Hermetic teachings include much regarding to the operation of the two principles of gender and the production and manifestation of various forms of energy, etc. But we do not deem it expedient to go into detail regarding the same at this point, because we are unable to back up the same with scientific proof, for the reason that science has not yet progressed thus far. But the example we have given you of this phenomenon of the electrons or corpuscles will show you that science is on the right path, and will also give you a general idea of the underlying principles. Some leading scientific investigators have announced their belief that in the formation of crystals. See, I was just talking about this. And believe it or not, I did not read this chapter yet. I read all the other chapters. I'm almost at the end of this book. But look, just as I was just talking about crystals, trying to give an analogy and breakdown and give you comparisons of why it says these things, here it goes saying these things right here. Some leading scientific investigators have announced their belief that in the formation of crystals, the Earth, there was to be found something that corresponded to sex activity. And believe it or not, the chakras, correlate with crystals as well. That's why you have your root chakra, which is red, will be a red type crystal stone. The next chakra will be your sacral chakra, which would be orange, which deals with passion and creativity. A reproductive organ, the sacral chakra, it deals with creativity. And there's a crystal that correlates with that as well, because you use these crystals when you are awakening your chakras or the kundalini. A lot of people don't know that you're doing that, but just like the rainbow, corresponds with the Most High and the presence, because all the energy fields in one. The same way the chakra is. It's basically a rainbow within you. Sex activity, which is another straw showing. And I just did a video on that. Rainbows and how they correlate with the eternal God and the chakras. Straws showing the direction the scientific winds are blowing, and each year will bring other facts to corroborate the correctness of the Hermetic principles of gender. It will be found that gender is in constant operation and manifestation in the field of organic matter and in the field of energy or force. Electricity is now generally regarded as the something into which all other forms of energy seem to melt or dissolve. The electrical theory of the universe is the latest scientific doctrine. And when you go into the Holy Tablets, that's what it talks about. It basically breaks the Bible down in an ethereal energy state of existence. And is growing rapidly in popularity and general acceptance. And it thus follows that if we are able to discover in the phenomenon of electricity, even at the very root and source of its manifestations, a clear and unthinkable evidence of the presence of gender and its activities, we are justified in asking you to believe that science at last has offered proofs of the existence and all universal phenomenon of that great hermetic principle, the principle of gender. It is not necessary to take up your time with the well-known phenomenon of the attraction and repulsion of the atom's chemical affinity, not infinity, the loves and hates of the atomic particles, the attraction of cohesion between the molecules of matter. These facts are too well known to need extended comment from us. But have you ever considered that all of these things are manifestations of the gender principle? Can you not see that the phenomenon is on all fours with that of the corpuscles of electrons? And more than this, can you not see the reasonableness of the Hermetic teachings, which assert that very law of gravitation, that strange attraction by reason of which all particles and bodies of matter in the universe tend towards each other, is but another manifestation of the principle of gender, which operates in the direction of attracting the masculine to the feminine energies, vice versa. It's another form of duality. We cannot offer you scientific proof of this at this time, but examine the phenomenon in the light of the Hermetic teachings on the subject and see if you have not better working hypothesis than any offered by physical science. Submit all physical phenomena to the test and you will discern the principle of gender ever in evidence. Let us now pass on to a consideration of the operation of the principle on the mental plane. Many interesting features are there awaiting examination. Salah, y'all bless. All those that's watching this. I pray that you understand it with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and like, share, and subscribe. Amin Ta Salah. When I say Amin, is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Meme is the mediator in between the two worlds, as above, so below. Tha is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That's why I say Amin Ta. Most people say Amen, but the real way to say it is like you would see in the Greek translation, Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. This is the end. So I'm saying as above, Meme, the mediator in between the two worlds, and Tha, the last. Salah. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. I'm out.